Tell us about the mob mentality we've been hearing about.
It's you want to try to connect to the past and the throwback. When I remember when I was a kid, I grew up in Colorado, and you would watch K-State defense, and them guys would fly around and hit people and do all that kind of stuff. We want to connect to that and play like that, though the rules have changed, so some of those hits, are illegal nowadays. And the old terms that they used to do, they're not politically correct nowadays. So you got to kind of switch it up a little bit, and just you still want to play with that attitude, but it's just be alert to the things we say.
What are the expectations for the defense this year, given that?
We want to. What we're trying to talk about is just playing. We're playing as hard as we can. Running the ball every time. Rotating if we need to, staying fresh, doing all those things. We won't play as fast as we can and try to. Hopefully, we know our jobs by now. We know how to do our jobs, and now we can start to use our cheats. And that's really what we're getting into once we start the game plan phase of things.
How did the injury of Cody Fletcher? How's that kind of impacted you recently?
It makes you change a little bit. We've been playing Eli at both spots, Nick's been taking more reps. You got to get some other guys ready. And it's good time of year to have that happen, because it shows all the other guys that might have thought, well, hey, I might be on the bubble, I'm not really sure. And then all of a sudden, I'm ready to play. So you can use it for an example for all the rest of the guys on the team, too.
What can you tell us about Nick? About Nick Allen.
Okay.
What can you tell us about him?
He's a young man that he did a really good job through spring. He's a face-tough kid that understands the game. He takes it and he works so hard at it that he actually knows both inside linebacker spots, so he can do some of those things. And he's a great kid that kind of forced his way into that through his work ethic. He put himself in position to have a spot in that kind of rotation.
Would you mind sharing your thoughts on Jaron McPherson as a player and what's allowed him to really kind of slide into that nickel spot a little bit?
He's done a great job. It was hard to evaluate him in the spring just because of where he was at. He was nicked up and he couldn't go for a lot of it until the end. And we just got a chance to see his skill set and say, hey, he's moving around really well. He understands the football game pretty good. He was playing strong, and right now Wayne's playing pretty good too. And it was just a spot where we're like, hey, let's keep moving guys around until we find slots that everybody feels good at. And he's one of those guys that we said, wow, he can attach the receivers on the inside. And he's doing some of those things really well. So you're saying, okay, he might be the guy there.
What's your philosophy on pass defense? You more of a zone guy or an aggressive guy with corners? How do you go about that?
I think you have to have a mix. There's no doubt. I mean, in any defense that you say, you got to look at it and say, okay, hey, if we're playing cover two, we're going to be zone. We're going to use zone eyes. We're going to break a bunch. If you go to quarters, you got to match up. You got to do things like that. So I think it's a mix and match as we go. And there'll be some man in there. I think you always got to play some man. And with the corners, I think that they're guys that, hey, you can stress them, but it can only last so long. So when you do play cover two, you want to give them a break and let them make some plays on some balls instead. And I think that if we're getting away with hitting people up front and we're getting to the quarterback, zone eyes a lot of times is better, just because you'll see more balls thrown, you have more opportunities at interceptions.
Kleinman mentioned the Tampa two. Now, obviously, linebacker is big. Tell us about the linebacker right now and where you've seen the most improvement.
Eli, we moved him with 2 practices to go in spring after Justin got hurt. And really, he's done an excellent job picking that stuff up. He's still working out some kinks, because it's a little bit different position. You got to be able to play run and pass, and you got to be able to do some of those things. The other guy who's really come along is Deuce. Deuce is a guy, Daniel Green. He's a guy that has really upped his communication skill. You can tell the things that whatever they did in the summertime, as a team, it really helped him, because he was a guy that went from, hey, I'm trying to fight my way through and kind of knock the rust off, and it's been so long since I played and I'm learning this new stuff, to now he's one of our best communicators out there on the field. He's really taking command. So I think that you'll see those guys, all 3 of them with Daquan in that mix too. Those guys will play a lot. And really it's kind of the spot where you say, well, who cares who the starter is? Just you're going to go out there and you're going to play a whole bunch.
I know. Biggest concerns right now on defense?
You know what? Just depth overall. I mean, I think up front we're doing pretty good. We have a bunch of guys inside that can play. We have a bunch of DNs. With Reggie back being healthy now. I think that'll be an okay thing. Just overall depth. If we get nicked up in certain spots, it's like, okay, this safety went down. Okay, well, this guy's got to play here, and he's our next best, so train him that spot. And then you mix in other guys. So there's a little bit of depth in that back end issues. Whether it's corner or safety, we have some backup plans to those. But if you get multiple guys hurt at any one spot, it would really hurt us.
I imagine offensive formation would dictate some who you'd start. But if you were playing a game tomorrow, do you feel pretty confident on who your 11 starters would be on defense?
Yeah, we do.
Is there a position that you would say is the most up in the air out of those?
You know, I mean, I'd always say it's in the up front because there's so much depth there. You know, I mean, and the way those guys play too, it's like linebacker. I mean, right now you'd say we're going to walk in the game, we're going to play 3 guys. Up there, they're going to play 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And so who's the starter exact? I know that means a lot to the kids, probably more than it does the coaches and fans.
Yep.
You're going to see a bunch of guys play.
You feel like you have the personnel right now to be as aggressive as you'd ideally want to be defensively?
You know, I think that we're close. I think that as we learn some of the tricks in and out, that's what we're talking about, like the playing. We know what to do and we know kind of how to do it. So it's, hey, how fast can we learn those things? How can we learn the keys that the offense gives us? And if we get to there, then I think we can be. I think the longer it takes us to mature and get to that playing football at like a 301, 401 level, I think that's the thing that's going to really change for us to see how aggressive we can really be on things.
What gives you concern as far as watching film on opponents?
You know, well, the first opponent, I know that, you know, you go into that game and you say, listen, they're a team that's won. They're an experienced team and they have their staff together for a long time. And they have a trigger man that knows how to win. And that's always the most concerning thing as you walk into the game. If their quarterback's a dude and has won a lot of games and is athletic and can run, I think that's always a concern because he's an explosive threat. You know, Nichols also has a couple running backs that have hit home runs and they have that explosiveness about them. And then they got a receiver outside that's a return that he's a big, I mean, whenever a dude got in trouble, throw it to him deep, it's okay. You know, so you got a mix of those things. You know, you got a mix of those things where you say, hey, the opportunities of explosives is more what hurts you in this league and overall anyway. So you got to say, okay, how are we going to limit those first? And then you work your way back in to say, okay, if you're giving up 2 or 3 yards, does it really matter? Okay, we can shut those down by doing this, but you have to take away the chunk plays first.
Van was telling us that you guys had kind of gone back and forth a little bit on where to play Walt this season. Are you pretty happy with where he is at the corner right now?
No doubt. You know, and Walt's a kid that, you know, we love Walt. He's a guy that, you know, you kind of battle through and say, hey, who would be the best kind of prototype nickel that you would want? He might be that guy too, but those guys have to be able to play outside sometimes, especially if they get nicked up. And he's in that plan too. Hey, if something happens in that safety wheel between a nickel and the safeties and all that kind of stuff, well, you know, Kiwi's playing well outside. You know, we got D-Pat, we got Lance, we got some young guys there, and they're not all young guys, 2 of them are seniors, but they can jump in and they're going to be in the mix anyway. So if something happened, that's always something that we can slide inside and still go to if we needed to.
2 more guys.
What's the main thing you've been working on with Patton?
D-Pat?
Yeah.
You know, just being able to be consistent. You know, he's a guy that you'll see one play. You know, like we had a mock game over here yesterday. He made a great play on a post that you're going, wow, that's a really good play. He did a great job. And then a few plays later, you know, he might just slip up a little bit, you know. But it's one of those deals as a senior, you know, you expect him to have his best year. So you would like to see him keep going and being more consistent all the time.
How much growth have you seen from Eli Huggins since you got this job?
You know, he's been a kid that you know, you kind of don't notice as much because he was a young guy in the fall, and you're trying to figure, or in the spring, and you're trying to figure out who you have up there. And you know, so first you notice Trey, and then you know you got Mitty, and you know you go to Joe, and you go through some of those guys. But once you start to get into it, and you just see how steady he is and how he comes to work every day, you go, hey, that's a guy that when you have 5 guys inside that you feel really good about, that you can get through some games, and maybe instead of making Trey play 80 snaps a game, now he's playing 50, and you can use him in some rush stuff, and you can spell him in those first down situations when you know you're going to get run, and you can put some other guys in, and that gives everybody a break and keeps them fresher.